Barabara kabisa, popote pale ulipo unanitazama kutoka chuo kikuu cha Nairobi, nimekaa kitako hapa nilipo. Natumai wewe ulioko mbele ya runinga NTV utafanya vivyo hivyo. Manake leo tunapakua kutoka hapa mjadala moto kabisa wa kitaifa unaohusu mpiga kura na vile vile uongozi. Tuko katika ukumbi unaofahamika kama Chandaria Center for Performing Arts, siku nyingine ambayo kampuni ya Nation Media Group inaandaa mjadala wa kitaifa, na kutuelekeza katika kipindi hiki si mwingine ila meneja mkuu wa kitengo cha habari cha utangazaji katika televisheni NTV, Bwana Linus Kaikai.
Asante sana Nimrod. Good evening from the Manu Chandaria Center for Performing Arts here at the University of Nairobi, right here in Nairobi. My name is Linus Kaikai. Welcome to the second forum of the Nation Media Group Leadership Series. The forum tonight focuses on the biggest event in the calendar of the country this year. That is the general election, slated for the 8th of August, just about 38 nights from tonight. The election this year will be the 11th since the country attained independence in 1963, and the 6th since Kenya restored the multi-party system of democracy. Periodic as they have been, elections in Kenya can rarely be said to guarantee sustainable peace and democracy. Elections remain high-stakes battles, bruising and divisive fights, complete with contested outcomes, some that last well into subsequent election cycles. Tonight on the Nation Leadership Forum, our town hall discussion is themed Voters and Leadership. Our panel, which I shall shortly introduce, consists of, among others, a voter from Migingo Island, right down in Lake Victoria. I'll be introducing that panel that will also include the chairperson of the IEBC, Wafula Chebukati. But before that, we'll go to a welcoming message from the partners of this leadership series, that is the Nation Media Group and the University of Nairobi. First statement will be Professor Stephen Kiama of the University of Nairobi. Let's welcome him with a warm round of applause.
On behalf of Professor Peter Bithi, the Vice Chancellor, University of Nairobi, who could not make it for this meeting, I want to welcome you all to this auditorium. Welcome. The Chair of the Independent Electoral and Boundary Commission, Ms. Wafula Chebukati, Your Excellencies, the ambassadors here present, Chief Executive Officers present, directors, sponsors, and partners of the forum, members of the university community, all invited guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I warmly welcome you to the second edition of the Thought Leadership Forum on the Kenya elections. Elections are weighty constitutional matters. Elections provide us with the opportunity for renewal of the social contract between the electorate and the leaders. The governance of the electoral process is a key ingredient in the outcome of the process. Since we are all stakeholders in the coming general elections, it was only fair that we convene this forum so as to engage in dialogue with a lot of sobriety, and more importantly, to share insights that may add value to the integrity and credibility of the process. Today, we shall hear the voice of voters, sauti ya wajiko as they say, the reassurance from IEBC, the voice of reason from the academia, and the good pieces of advice from friends from all over Kenya. After the inaugural Thought Leadership Forum on the drought and hunger in April 2017, we witnessed positive actions by the cabinet secretaries who are here, that is Honorable Eugene Wamalwa and Honorable Willie Bett, to deliver on the promise that they made in the very forum. I want to be optimistic that the resolutions that we shall make today shall also have a positive influence on the management of our elections, both in the short and long term. Thank you, and God bless you. Asante.
Thank you very much, Professor Stephen Kiama, who has made that statement on behalf of the University of Nairobi. from where this event is coming live to you. Now, let us welcome the Group CEO of the Nation Media Group, Mr. Joseph Muganda, with a warm round of applause.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very delighted that we're having this second Thought Leadership Forum. I am often asked by people who mean well for our country, as the leading media house in the region and in the country, what are you doing to ensure that we have a peaceful country? We talk about the issues that do matter, and as you are very well aware, the big issue on the table in this country today is the election that will be held in about 38 days' time. So we are happy that we've used our assets and our resources to assemble this erstwhile conference or thought leadership forum to ensure that we have the ability to have the discussions, and people who have issues that they would like to raise can be raised in, I think importantly, in a manner where we listen to each other. And that's the whole objective of this forum. We did have the first one on food security. We have the second one today, and the elections and leadership will be the big agenda. And our commitment to you who are sitting here in the country at large is this is a forum we have started. It's a journey, and we will be holding it now post the election to ensure that we develop our great country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, the CEO of the Nation Media Group, Joseph Muganda. Let me now introduce the panel in front of us. Starting from my right, we do have Regina Opondo, who is the chairperson of the Election Observation Group, ELOG. Regina. Next to her is the Azure Energy CEO, Sumaya Hassan. Right at the center of that panel is the IEBC chairman, Wafula Chebukati. Next to Wafula Chebukati is Florence Ogur, who is a voter and also an aspirant for MCA in Migingo Island. Florence Ogur. And finally, in the panel, we do have Professor Karuti Kanyinga. As is the tradition with the Nation Media Leadership Series, participation in the discussion will flow both ends of the auditorium. And indeed, we acknowledge the presence of the Inspector General of Police, Joseph Boynet. Let's clap for him. The chairperson of the Jamii Telcom, Joshua Chepkony. George Morara of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, KNHCR. George Kegoro of the Kenya Human Rights Commission and the Kura Yangu, Sauti Yangu initiative. And we also do have Professor Maria Nzomo of the University of Nairobi. Our forum starts right now, and we open with the single most important institution tonight in this room, and that is the IEBC. And Chairman Wafula Chebukati, right here with us tonight. The question is, will the IEBC deliver a credible election on the 8th of August?
Yeah, thank you, Linus. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to assure you that IEBC is ready to deliver a free, fair, and credible election to Kenyans on the 8th of August this year. We have all systems go. We only have a few things left. Procuring and printing of ballot papers is ongoing. We also have staff training, recruitment of presiding officers, which is ongoing. Otherwise, all other systems are ready, and we shall give Kenyans an election come the 8th of August.
Chairman, if you can address yourself to the specifics with regard to the printing of ballot papers. We are aware that the IEBC is indeed facing a court action from one of the, that is the opposition, and that is yet to be heard. How is that affecting your preparation?
Well, as I've just said, the printing of ballot papers is ongoing after the procurement processes which we did. as an independent commission, we took every aspect of procurement in place, and we believe we made the right decision as far as
the printer has been contested. It's a matter contested in court.
Yes.
And you are saying it's still going on?
Yes, as you know, when a matter is in court, you don't say much about it. I think there's a rule called sub judice. So we want the court to make a decision without making any utterances that can influence that decision.
So regardless the process in court right now, Chairman, are you telling us that the printing of ballot papers, including presidential ballot papers, is going on?
Right now, what's being printed is ballot papers for the 5 elective positions. The presidential ballot papers will commence, printing will commence on the 18th of July. So as we speak, the other processes are going on except the presidential ballot papers.
I'm certain you'll also benefit from the panelists on both sides of your chair tonight and also in front here. And I want to go to Regina Opondo, who is the chair of the Elections Observation Group, ELOG. Your concerns or comments on the state of preparedness for the August 8th election?
I think the first thing to mention is that for a process to hold and for a process to be grounded and for people to have faith in the process, there must be credibility. The process must be predictable. We've expressed concerns in the past about preparedness, and preparedness at the level of the elections management body, which is IEBC, but also preparedness of other agencies that are involved in elections. And that would include the National Police Service, the Office of the Registrar, etc. So it seemed that we were all struggling to catch up. We know the circumstances were very difficult with the changes of the law, the changes of the commission, etc. But I think if we compare 2017 now to 2013, the IEBC is not doing too badly. I know we bash them a lot, but they're not doing too badly, but they could do better. How they would do better is that trust is created and confidence in the process is created if the process is credible. And that means that you must provide information to the public. It means that people must know what is happening, when it's happening, how it's happening, where it's happening. And everybody is able to participate, from persons with disabilities to women to marginalized groups in far-flung areas, in near areas, in urban areas who are also excluded, so that everybody feels this is our process and we're all working towards the same goal.
Regina, when you use the word credibility so repeatedly in your remarks, and Chairman Chebukati is not too far from where you're seated, what should he understand about that word?
Okay. From where we sit, especially as observers, is that you're doing everything right and the public is always with you. So the public is aware of every step of the way. So if we're talking about voter registration, then the process is clear, information is provided, it's clear, and the process works well. Where we have problems, then we can say we have problems, and the problems are solved and information is provided. Where we talk about technology and the procurement of technology, then everybody's clear how that process is being handled, information is available, and for us as observers, we can actually observe and say, yes, this happened or it did not happen, and these are the areas we can improve on. When you talk about ballot papers, when you talk about ballot boxes, when you talk about mass voter registration or availability of the register, when you talk about the list of polling stations, so each and every process, because the thing we tend to forget is that elections is not just the event the day we vote, but it's the full cycle of everything from the laws being changed to every process involved. So if that process is clear and understood and people can participate in it, then we can say the process is credible.
Right, thank you. Let me go to the end of the other end of the panel, and I want to bring in Professor Karuchi Kanyinga from the Institute of Development Studies. Professor Kanyinga, what are your concerns about the two issues that are under discussion right now, that is credibility and the state of preparedness for the elections 2017?
Thank you very much. Let me begin by saying that it's not good enough for an electoral management agency to be technically prepared. I think we have never had any problem with technical preparedness of elections in this country from 1992. The only period I remember where there was a small problem was 1992, where some constituencies did elections in 1993, on the 1st of January 1993, Tana River, Tigania, I can remember quite a number, and simply because it rained and they could not deliver ballot boxes, some candidates stole ballots, and that kind of stuff. What preparation means in our case here, because IEBC will be technically prepared, is political preparedness. And by political preparedness, I mean the extent to which the IEBC is creating trust among the political players and among the citizens of this country. We do not need an electoral management body to be condemned by one party or to be supported regularly by another party. That really creates an impression that is not very good for an electoral management body, especially when we are very polarized in this country. We are divided down the middle, where some parts of the country have got confidence in the IEBC and other parts of the country do not have sufficient confidence in the IEBC. So political preparedness, the extent to which you can create trust among the various Kenyan communities is good, is the most important thing. But let me point out that the surveys that I've seen in recent times have shown that confidence in IEBC has risen from about 51% in a few months ago to about 61%. Tom Wolf is here, he's the expert, he's a witch doctor in that, and he can tell us much more about that. But I'm simply saying that actually confidence in IEBC is on increase compared to a few months ago. But when you look at that confidence from one region to another, you realize actually we have got a crisis in the country. Western Province and Nyanza Province do not see IEBC in the same way that Rift Valley and Central Kenya see IEBC. And that's where the challenge is. We need political preparedness before we go forward.
And indeed, I'll be letting the chairperson of IEBC, Chebukati, to respond to that very interesting perspective you've introduced of political preparedness as opposed to technical preparedness. But before that, before the chairperson, I want to go to Sumaya. Do you have a perspective that is dramatically different from what Professor Kanyinga is introducing, political rather than technical preparedness?
The perspective that I take is the perspective of industry. When we look at the different sectors within this country, the different industries in the country, by and large, what is the view of industry to what is happening in terms of preparation, and what are they doing about it? From my own engagement with different sectors, only because of the field that we are involved in, we tend to engage with different sectors, there is a lot of fear. There is a lot of concern about what may happen during and post the election. As a result, what we are seeing from industry is a lot of scaling back of operations. We are seeing industries destocking. We are seeing companies that ordinarily may buy 30,000 liters at a go buying 1,000 liters. We are seeing industries closing shop and laying people off for a while. We are seeing investors saying, yes, we want to come to Kenya, but we will only physically mobilize after the elections. So the reality that we are seeing on the ground is that there is a lot of pulling back as far as the economic activity is concerned. There is a lot of concern of having assets that are not immediately liquid, and nobody wants to hold assets that will take too long to turn around.
Are you saying business, the economy is basically on hold?
I'm saying certain sectors are on hold, certain sectors have actually below what we have seen in the months prior to the lead up to the elections.
And we'll discuss that as a trend that actually attends to elections historically in this country. But let me finally go to the final panelist. That is Florence Ogur, who is both a voter and a candidate for position of MCA in Nyatike constituency, which also covers Migingo Island, the famous Migingo Island. Florence, you're seated next to the chairperson of the IEBC. As a voter and as a candidate, do you feel he is ready for this election?
Thank you, Bwana Kakai. You know, voters need trust. They need to trust IEBC, which most of the people in the country do not, and even voters does not trust them because they have not come clear to tell them the way forward. Like now, he has just said that their papers are being printed, and some of the things they are waiting for the presidential. Now, if the matter is in the court, how comes they are printing other papers? What about if the court will not tell them to go ahead? What will they do?
Thank you. Thank you. And I think it's one of the questions that Mr. Wafula Chebukati will be responding to after this short break. We are taking a very short break. You're watching the Nation Leadership Forum. The hashtag right on there is NMG Leadership Forum. Do join the conversation. This is coming to you live on NTV from the University of Nairobi. We are coming back in a short moment. Thank you very much indeed to our audience gathered right here at the Manu Chandaria Auditorium at the University of Nairobi. And we are discussing voters and leadership. And we want to start with Wafula Chebukati, the chairperson of the IEBC, just to address the two issues raised in part one of this discussion. One by Professor Karuti Kanyinga, which was the issue of political preparedness of the IEBC for the election. He says the concern is not so much the technical preparedness, but the political preparedness. And he did illustrate what he meant by that. And the lady seated next to you, Florence Ogur from Migingo, also did express concerns about low levels of trust in your institution. Please do address those two questions very quickly.
Thank you, Linus. I want to disagree with the professor. It's not just political preparedness. The technical part is actually, I would give it 70%. And it's what gives birth to that political preparedness. I'll just give you an example. In 2013, we received the kits which were used in elections, 10 days to elections. This time round, we received the kits 50 days to elections. We have trained our staff who are now cascading the training downwards to the clerks and the POs. It was not done in 2015 because they received the kits late. That meant there was no much training or training at all. 2013, we had only one service provider giving a transmission of results. Right now, we have the three of them on board, the big three, and they will all take part in transmitting results, and they're ready even in areas where there's no a network, a 2G or 3G network. So the technical part is very crucial. And I would want to say lack of that technical part is what gives birth to political temperatures. Now, let's now turn to the political side. When I came in office with my team, I said we shall have an open door policy. I encouraged all players to come and see us. We went out also to meet some of them. And it's still ongoing. Up to now, we encourage every political stakeholder and other stakeholders. Most of you have come to my office. We encourage that networking. And that's the only way we can cure that aspect of political temperatures. We are transparent. We're giving all the information required. Some keep on writing letters to us. We answer all the letters. I think we all have a part to play. And if we give you the right answers and you go out there as a politician and say the opposite of what we have said, then it becomes a problem. And
Chairman, I think Professor would be happy if you spoke of the temperatures by name. And I think everybody is aware of the immense pressure the IEBC finds itself under in the vicious battle between the Jubilee side and NASA side of the political divide. How do you navigate that? How are you navigating that as IEBC?
I heard his professor's comments. He's saying IEBC is perceived to be speaking the same language as Jubilee. I think that I've heard it, I've read it in the press and I've watched it on TV. The thing is, we are an independent institution and we come up and we have policies, and what we say is as per our policies. But one thing I do know, and you all know, when NASA says this, Jubilee has to say the opposite, and I think vice versa. And I think that it happens that we may be thinking on the same side as one of the parties, but I think we don't want to get into the political aspects. We are the referee. As you know very well, the referee stays neutral in the field. The players haven't even come in the field yet. They're still practicing out there. But we are waiting for them, and we shall be fair.
Thank you. And as you wait for the players, I think there'll be some perspectives from the audience as well. And I want to bring in George Morara. We are discussing credibility and electoral preparedness, and you've listened to the panel in front. More importantly as well, the responses from the chairperson of the IEBC. Your take on this question of credibility, particularly George Morara of Kenyan National Human Rights Commission.
Thank you so much, Linus, and thank you so much, the panelists. For me, I look at the whole issue of credibility broadly to also include the ability and capacity of the Kenyan voter to participate in the whole electoral process in a manner that will contribute to that credibility. As we speak, and I think the chairman is here, is going to respond to this. Traditionally, the IEBC has been in the forefront preparing voter education material, leading in that campaign. There's minimum or very little of that happening. We have an additional 5 million voters from the last election. We had 14 million, now we have 19. There's a whole new generation of voters who need to be told what it means to vote. If we are to go by what happened in 2013, where we saw a lot of Kenyans really confused about the 6 positions that they were voting for. Secondly, for me, Linus, and this is the last point I'm making, I look at credibility of the whole electoral process from a perspective where every Kenyan is allowed to participate in this process. As we speak, there are sections of this country, especially the coastal parts of the country. We know what's happening in Lamu. We know what's happening in Mandera. We know what has been happening in Laikipia North. We know what has been happening in Baringo. So for me, if a certain percentage of this country is going to be disenfranchised from the whole process, then that will affect the credibility of the whole electoral process. And I'm happy that the IG is here, and he'll tell us the measures that are being taken to ensure that Kenyans in any part of the country are not disenfranchised. Finally, again, this is to the IG. I hope that come election, we are not going to be subjected to an environment where civil liberties are suspended. What we want our police officers to do is to provide an environment where Kenyans can do what is right, as opposed to coming out in the full might that may actually intimidate some voters from the whole process.
I'll actually give the Inspector General of Police a moment to prepare his answers to those 2 questions as I introduce Professor Maria Nzomo, who is right here in the audience. Your concerns on this question of credibility and preparedness of the IEBC ahead of the elections?
As I listen to the various panelists, apart from the chair of the IEBC, it is quite clear to me that we have a very serious problem as we head to the elections that we cannot wish away. And I have watched elections every 5 years since 1992. And there seems to be a constant and persistent recurrence of the same problems. Around the IEBC in particular, because it's not the only institution that is part and parcel of the problem in the electoral process. There are other institutions as well. But regarding the IEBC, its credibility has constantly been questioned. It's not a new thing. It's not a new phenomenon for a number of reasons. And with all the best will in the world, chair, the current chair of the IEBC, part of the problem with the electorate and other Kenyans is that you are not really as independent as you claim. You are already compromised by the various interest groups. And so even if you tell us you are independent, we have seen consistently IEBC being compromised and hence unable to deliver a credible, free, and fair
Professor,
election.
do you have one instance that you can use as a demonstration to illustrate that the IEBC is compromised?
In terms of specifics?
Easier, yes. How specifically is the IEBC compromised?
Maybe a better answer. Instead of, I don't want to get into particulars because I may be, I find myself in court tomorrow. But, but let me make the point I wanted to make. My point is this, Chebukati, even if you mean well and you want to do what other IEBCs before you, headed by different people, have failed to do or were not able to do with all the best will in the world, you have 38 days. 38 days. What are you going to do in 38 days to restore voter confidence, to restore those who feel they'll be, compromised, not compromised, but made unable to participate, either as participants in the electoral process itself, as people who want to become into leadership, especially women. Already a lot of women candidates are having a lot of issues.
Thank you.
And so I would want to know, what are you going to do in 38 days to
Thank you.
restore voter and electoral confidence in
Thank
the
you.
entire
Thank you,
process?
Professor Nzomo. The IEBC chair will be processing his answers. As I go to the Inspector General of Police, the gentleman behind you, George Morara, did ask a specific question about the hotspots, some of the areas in this country that are currently not experiencing peace and stability. What are you going to do to make sure that those areas are not affected negatively in the sense of conducting elections?
Thank you very much, Linus. In response to that question, I would wish to state at the outset that we in the police are ready and prepared to provide a safe and a secure environment for the Kenyan people to exercise their democratic rights and their right to vote. I will go straight to answer George's question, and that is, what are we doing to allow Kenyans in areas that are experiencing certain security challenges to vote? And the answer is that it's not lost to any one of us here that indeed certain parts of our country are experiencing cat rustling, and we have a very real threat of terrorism that has made the minister to declare certain parts as disturbed and dangerous, so that we can be allowed to mount security operations to fight off terrorists and cat rustlers. And I'm glad to say that to a very large measure we are succeeding, and that's why many parts of Lamu, for instance, have experienced a relative calm in the last 2 years, except that in the last couple of weeks we have had some contacts with the terrorists that many of you will know have resulted to deaths of officers, and in the last 2 days, even civilians. We are battling them.
IG, you did mention security operations, and I want to refer you to specific cases in Baringo and Laikipia, where the security operations actually do cause displacement of population. People run away from their homes. And those are the people probably George is concerned about, that they may not be able to vote because they'll not be home in the first place.
That was a couple of months ago, and that's not the situation as of now. People have returned back to their homes with the onset of the rains. The difficulties that we experience with the invasions of private property have by and large been solved. And I can say that with confidence, because I was in Baringo, specifically in Tiati, last weekend. And I met quite a number of those folks there, and I didn't see any difficulties at all. So to answer George's question is, yes, there are difficulties in certain parts of this country. Yes, we are taking the necessary measures to address them. But in the most parts of this country, we have very, very strong reasons to believe that every Kenyan who wishes to go and vote will have that opportunity to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aji. Let me go to this other side, and there is George Kegoro. Your perspective on credibility and preparedness of the elections. There's a microphone to George Kegoro here. There's a microphone right there.
Thank you very much. Credibility, I think, refers to competent institutions. The greatest asset that we can lend to credibility is to ensure that the responsible institutions carry out their responsibility competently. The IEBC is the foremost institution in elections. The explanations and the assurances given by the chair are reassuring. I think they should be constant because the public is also subject to all manner of rumor all the time. So constant communication to the effect that we are ready is necessary, but also that should be backed by a demonstration of that readiness, because even in 2013, remember, the IEBC assured that everything was going to be fine until everything failed. The public posture by the IEBC is we are ready for, in 2013 was that we were ready for elections, but we had very, very significant problems in that election. With regard to other institutions, particularly police, and I'm glad the IG is here, I think the issue to make, the point to make there is that we're going to, as happens in all elections, we're going to have huge amounts of mobilization by politicians of crowds to aid their political causes. Police police patients will be very severely tested, and responses in the previous situations we've had of crowd control, responses have not been uniform across the country. Police respond very, very vastly differently in different parts of the country. That is a problem, Mr. IG. We have only one country and one police service, but it treats different citizens across the country completely differently. Citizens in opposition strongholds are easily subjected to excessive force. Citizens in parts of the country that are perceived as belonging to the governing party are treated more responsibly by police. I think that's an issue for you there that you need to ensure that it doesn't occur this time around. Police also has tended to approach its work around elections on the basis that we don't need to prepare, we'll be okay on the day. I think beyond the assurances that we've had from you that the police are ready, a demonstration of what constitutes that readiness needs to be given to the public. You need to assure us that we are ready because of the following elements. Police need huge amounts of humility as it polices the election. That humility is what then it is what gives opportunity for the public to support police in what they're doing. If police talk down at citizens, which sometimes happens, I think your personal style as IG has been assuring, but your predecessors were not necessarily as assuring. So if police had an approach that had a significant amount of humility, a significant amount of recognition that citizens must participate in their own policing, that would significantly help. And
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, George. I think you've introduced the IGP to take the spot just in the same way as the IEBC. I want to give Chairman Wafula Chebukati just a minute to respond to the issues of compromises claimed by Professor Nzomo. And you're only a few months in office, basically. Aren't you entitled to some level of innocence based on that?
Linus, it's been a few months, but it's like years for me. That's one thing I don't say, that I'm a few months old in office. That one I don't say anymore. Professor, the word compromise, to me, I think from the academia world, I would have expected you to say a little bit more, because you started a rumor now, and we have to find a way of stopping it. IEBC, as an institution, we have commissioners who went through vetting, and they're credible people, wonderful people I've worked with. And I believe we are there to deliver what our mandate is. And we are an independent institution. We have the secretariat. And I want to be on record for saying this, that should any of you meet a member of the IEBC secretariat or staff who looks or asks for any favor to deliver service, please let me know. We shall send them home straight away. We are not compromised. We are there to serve Kenyans, and our work is to ensure that everybody gets the fairness they deserve.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. In part 2 of this discussion, we'll be discussing what do voters really want. We'll be focusing on the other side of the coin, which is the voters. We've been talking about the IEBC, which is the body in charge of organizing the elections. And after this break, we'll be talking about the voters. What do they actually look for? Do they look for integrity, peace, values? What do they look for as they go to that polling station? We are taking a short break. You're watching the NTV Leadership Series. The hashtag, once again, you can follow this conversation online, is hashtag NMG Leadership Forum. We'll be back shortly. Thank you very much and welcome back to the show. You're watching the National Leadership Forum coming to you live from the Manu Chendaria Auditorium at the University of Nairobi. And we're now quickly moving to 2 final segments. And the next segment will move very quickly by addressing the question of why Kenyan elections are matters of life and death. It's a deadly process. Every year, people possibly even fight. Lives are lost because of elections. And I want to get Professor Karuti Kanyinga in a minute. Why are our elections such a high-stakes game? France voted recently. It was a very straightforward thing. By 11 p.m., they had a new president and a new parliament. Here we take days to know leaders and tension and sometimes bloodshed.
It's because elections are about self-interest of individuals rather than the interest of the society. I have a friend who sometimes back said that some politicians have got so much interest that they can do anything to mess our whole community. He says politicians are generally born straight. As they grow up, they become crooked. And when they are mature, they become yellow. Those are politicians that we have. Now, I'm mentioning that specifically because the self-interest of politicians is very different from what our ordinary citizens want. Politicians would like to get into positions of office because that way they will accumulate wealth through different means without any accountability. And many of them, of course, will be voted for, but will never be able to account to the communities that they serve. You can see that high turnover of MPs. You can see the high turnover of councillors in the old days, and I'm sure we are going to see bloodbath among the MCAs this time.
Let's pause that, Professor, and I want to bring in Hussein Khalid of Haki Africa, is the Executive Director of Haki Africa. Your take on this very question of why elections in Kenya are such a deadly affair?
I echo Professor's sentiments that in most cases, politics is considered a personal agenda for the politicians in this country. And that's why we need to take this question back to the IEBC. Are you ready for these elections? Can you take full responsibility? As a citizen, as a person from Mombasa, we don't want stories of technology or the solar did not hit this or that. Can you here today take full responsibility, whether it's technical, political, economic, or social, to say that you will deliver? And in case anything goes wrong, are you ready to face Kenyans? And also with the security. Yeah, the IG is here and we know they're doing very good work, but the problem with security from a citizen's perspective has always been the impunity. People know they will take sides, they will engage in partisan politics, and nothing will be done to them. So again, to the IG, are you telling us clearly here that if any officer is engaged in any electoral malpractice, is engaged in any partisan politics, is engaged in human rights violations, that you will personally ensure if there is evidence that they face the full wrath of the law, because that's the message that we need to send out. If we do this, then we will have credible elections. Building trust is what we have to do, and we have to do this by showing clearly that we mean business.
Thank you, Khalid. Please pass the microphone to Peter Kenneth, who is seated right in front of you. And you ran for president in 2013. You're running for Nairobi governor this year. And politics and elections in Kenya remain such a life and death matter. Why is that? What is your experience in the field?
I really don't think it's a matter of life and death. I've survived out of politics for the last 4 years in a sober manner because I have my own things that I do. So it's not a full time in politics. But I think the question that you're addressing is a question that the lady Florence floated at her only initial speech, which was never answered by the chair of IEBC, the issue of trust by the voters. I think what IEBC should address is how to reward the voter. From the time the voter goes to the polling station, can there be an incentive of how efficient that system is to allow the voter to come knowing, one, it will be an efficient system, and number two, reward the voter by ensuring the will of that voter prevails throughout from that moment. And that's where there is a danger, that voters take part in elections and they take part in a willing manner, they take part with a lot of faith in the system, but comes towards the evening, immediately after they vote actually, they are not so sure that what they voted for is what will be announced as the results. And if we don't do anything about it, a time will come when you'll have elections and voters will not show up because they do not have faith with what you'll announce. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter Kenneth. We will be taking answers from Wafula Chebukati in a moment, but I want to bring another gentleman who has joined us, and that is Mr. Kirubi. There are questions about trusting the IEBC. Do you trust the IEBC as a voter?
This is a foreign territory for me. But to be honest, I'm here to learn, to listen. Rather than go to the chairman, I like to turn the table on ourselves. We, the media people. I am a media man. I own a media house, very big, and I'm invited here by a very big media. My biggest brother is here. My appeal to the media itself, if we sat together and decided to black out anybody who is out of line in bringing peace, in talking the truth, and allow Kenyans only to receive the materials that are credible. We are the agent of all these people, but we sit here and criticize the politician. The politician, if we left him to speak on his own, I think only his family will listen to him. If we switch them off, that we have credibility level for your material to go on our newspaper, on our radio, on our TV. We are the merchants of doom. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I also want us to hear from Mr. Joshua Chepkony, who is the chairman and CEO of the Jamii Telecommunications. And as you take the microphone, Mr. Chepkony, maybe you give us the concerns of the business community when elections in this country are treated as something that is such a deadly affair, a matter of life and death.
Linus, I think it's a good opportunity to tell Kenyans that first and foremost, we need to get rid of being negative about our country. Every activity, whether it is political, we're always approaching it from a negative point of view. That is the biggest problem in this country. It's a culture that we need to kill it as fast as possible. Two, on the question of, I'm also part of the media, as Kirubi has put it, but the fact remains is that we want Kenyans to start believing in themselves, because this nation today is yearning for greatness. The nation is yearning for inspirations. We are at an historical opportunity as a country to be able to transform this land if we can avoid the question of competitive politics to the extent of anything that we see in front of us is negative. On the business side of it, I doubt whether somebody says that, you know, if you close your business and go out of this country, some of us who belong to this country, we have no other country to go. So we'll have confidence in our people. We have hope that there will be peace in our country. You have to be positive. We can't think of negative and say that you want to, right now, to close your shop and move out of there. If you move, then you don't have a confidence. You are a guy who is moved. But some of us who are putting investment in this country because we believe in our people. We believe the mistakes we do, we know mistakes will happen, but the fact, the greatest of all, we know Kenya will be resilient and the nation will move along. Leaders will come and go after 5 years. Some come in 5 years. In fact, I hope the elections by 8th of August, those who will not be contributing positive to this country will be weeded off by the voters. But I want to bring one important issue to close my remark. We need to look at the economics of these elections after 5 years. In countries like Peru has something called DNI. They have a single identity system whereby the voter, if you don't vote, you are penalized $35. So it means it is your responsibility as a citizen to make sure that you go and participate in the election. But equally, if you don't participate in an election and you don't vote, when you go tomorrow to cash your money in the bank, the system will be able to identify you and tells you that until you pay that penalty of $35. I think this country today, technology is there. We need to do it so that we don't every year you are printing continuously. You are wasting the resources which you should have invested in irrigation. We should have invested in roads. We are wasting money and we are celebrating as a country every year talking about wasting money and burning money. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Joshua Chepkony. I want to bring in Bishop Alfred Rotich. You are in the audience as well. And I would like to hear your take on what Mr. Chepkony is calling a culture of negativity, vis-a-vis the fact that elections in this country have been treated as a matter of life and death. We've seen politicians praying in church for victory for their respective sides, even though they profess to share the God. Bishop Rotich.
Well, I have seen these elections in the country that needs a lot of treatment. We need a lot of psychiatrists around. We need psychologists around to accompany the politicians when they are on the podium. Before they go and utter what they utter, there must be chaplains around to tell them what to say. You told us when we came to this lovely place, please be silent. We obeyed. We need people of credibility to referee the politicians when they are coming on the podium, to tell them in the briefing in the lobby house, look, you're going to communicate to the public. Even if you are an orator, choose your words. And that has to be done. Many years ago, a DC would be the referee, would be the timekeeper, and all candidates would be on one podium. And they were told 10 minutes each. And if they say something that promotes ethnicity or even negativity, then they were chopped out in the list. So I think we are coming to a stage whereby, yes, we need them to pray. But do they pray? Do they pray? So we need to ask them to come to a place like this, and we stand there and educate them. We train professors, we train doctors, we train the priests, we train the lawyers. Do we train politicians before they go? So I think it is incumbent on us to say, let's pray for peace. And one St. Francis said that if you speak about peace, make sure you have a reservoir in your heart for peace.
Thank you, Bishop Rotich. Dr. Ngumi, you're next to the bishop. And I don't know whether you agree with him, because it sounds to me that the caliber of politicians he's talking about are no longer in this country.
I've never been more disinterested in politicians in my life than I have been for the last 2 years or so, because people started talking about campaigning in 2015 towards the end, right? And here we are now, 38 days to go. My primary interest is the people of Kenya. I find it odd. We can't use France as an example to compare to this country. We were just talking here with Julius and with Mr. Kirubi about how in other countries, people separate elections so that county issues happen on one time, national issues happen on another time, and the stresses on the country are diffused in that way, as opposed to us who are here fighting with the idea of a six-piece suit. Whoever heard of this? This is why we are so deeply stressed with these issues. The second thing is when we talk about life and death, because for real, for very many people, it's life and death. When you open the news and you see a camera and Kenyans fighting over flour, it is life and death. It became life and death a long time ago. For some people, the reason that things become violent, and I truly believe that positivity, when we talk about some of these things, is a luxury. The reason that they become violent is because for them, their lives cannot go back to what they were before. So even if it means things need to change drastically for everybody else, then people are going to go in that general direction. And so we need to continually ask ourselves about the people. What are the people thinking? What are the people feeling? We are never listening to the people. When we turn back to these politicians, they're always the ones who are talking. We're always the ones that are listening to them. We allow them to come and take stages insulting one another instead of asking them, why are they giving us a manifesto when we have 30 days to go? What have they been campaigning on this whole time? So let's talk to the people more. People. In fact, I'm more interested right now in hearing from the audience than anything else.
Thank you. And we'll be talking to the people, including the audience right here, in a short while. But before we take a very quick break, I want to give 1 minute to Wafula Chebukati, the chairperson of the IEBC, to respond directly to the question raised by candidate Peter Kenneth, who is running for governor in Nairobi. Mr. Chebukati.
I believe the Peter Kenneth's question was on
you rewarding the voter with a credible process, and
yes.
them believing that what they did during the day is what you are giving us tallied results in the evening.
Yeah, thank you. We have set in motion various processes, and I think the voter this time round, we have a maximum of 700 voters on one queue. So that's why we have 41,000 polling stations spread across the country with a maximum of 700 voters on a queue. Meaning that those are the names which will be in the gadget which you are going to use. And now that gadget has 700 names or less. Now if there's any extra names that will come, the gadget will not recognize them. That's one. Two, we expect that a voter will take a maximum of 5 minutes at most, even with the 6 ballot papers which you'll be casting. I know some people think that's not true, but that's going to happen because verification, if you went for verification, how long did you take? 1 minute, 2 minutes? And the gadgets we have are able to carry you through that process. And maybe just to touch on the issue of results transmission, because I think it's important. If you look at our job is to count votes. After the people have voted, we have to give you the correct number of votes which you have got. Now, after the votes are counted, our presiding officers, and I'm happy the Court of Appeal came up to clarify part of it. The polling station is the primary source of voting, and the result from the polling station is the primary result. And basically, that result will be transmitted to the central servers, our database, which will be accessed by everybody, the returning officers, the media from the portal, and every other Kenyan will be able to access it. So this time round, your votes will be counted they'll be accessed by you even before the results are announced. So Kenyans need to have trust in what we are doing and judge us after. Yes.
And the votes you will announce
yes.
are the votes that were cast.
Exactly.
That's your pledge.
Give us judgment after we do the job, not before. Don't prejudge us.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Thank you,
yes.
Chairman Chebukati. We're taking a very short break, and when we come back, we'll be discussing the place of the voter in the scheme of things, including the election of officials or politicians right across all the 6 elective positions. You're watching the National Leadership Forum live from Nairobi University.